Straw, on the one hand, the coalition is sort of good news for Labour. You've now got a monopoly of the opposition. On the other hand, if these two parties stick together successfully, this could be a long-term threat to the Labour Party.
Well, I think the first thing is that there are, of course, local elections and European elections and elections in Wales and Scotland, some of those just in a year's time. So there'll certainly be a swinging of the pendulum back towards Labour. That will give the party lots of activists on the ground, new activists on the ground, a lot of energy. But certainly it's a challenge in the long term. What do we do on a lot of these policy issues where the coalition is claiming to take the centre ground and to be progressive? Do we, as there's been some examples of, tack to the right, or do we take a more progressive position and hold their feet to the fire, try and help them, as with things like AV and climate change? So a number of challenges for the Labour Party, but ultimately this will come down to how they manage the economy and some of these other issues. And I think the early signs are they're going to do this in a way that will erode some public support. And if Labour get the framing right on this and make sure that they aren't erroneously accused of being to blame for the predicament that we're in, then there's a lot of hope for a return for a Labour government in 5 years' time.
Is the stuff that you admire in the way the coalition's operating, particularly the way in which the two parties seem to be working together quite amicably, at least so far?
Well, I mean, I'm a supporter of electoral reform, so I do think that coalition governments can work and should work together. And there's certainly a lot of evidence that they're doing that. But I think there's also some evidence that there's some funny things going on. This isn't the return of process that some people have talked about. We've seen Vince Cable on graduate tax, on immigration, saying things that either get slapped down or he's taking a different position.
That always happens in government anyway.
Well,
the ministers speak out of turn.
Of course it does, but then the coalition shouldn't claim this is a completely new approach to politics, because actually there's quite a lot that's similar with the past. And ultimately, all political parties are coalitions within themselves, so there's a bit of this, and ministers will end up getting, in some cases, captured by their departments, and we go back to the Whitehall turf war. So it's early days to form any conclusions, but certainly they are keeping the lights on in Whitehall. We haven't ended up in financial meltdown as Ken Clarke and George Osborne predicted before the election would take place if there was a coalition government, so that's positive.
There's part of you saying, gosh, if only we'd managed to persuade the Liberal Democrats to come in with us.
I don't think it was realistic in the end. In other circumstances where the Liberal Democrats had polled where many people thought they would, and they'd had 20 more seats, if Labour had done a bit better, then maybe that could have worked. But the Labour government was tired. I think the public had made their mind up about Gordon Brown, and so it wasn't really feasible to see how that would work. But the nature of this British political system going forward is that even if we stick with first past the post, we're quite likely to have hung parliaments again in the future. So it may be the case that Labour and Liberal Democrats will have to work together in the future, and people on both sides need to be wary about that.